Hey guys, how you doing today? It's P.E. Gilbert, your blogger, writing consultant and the author to the upcoming fantasy novella, The Sultan's Daughter, and welcome back to the show. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button. So recently, as you probably know, I did a video on part 1 of my top 12 scenes that worked in Game of Thrones. Jon and Bran not reuniting at Craster's Keep, Syrio Forel trains Arya Stark with Ned Stark watching, Jon Snow becomes Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, the battles of the Green Fork and the Whispering Woods, Theon returning to Pike, and Prince Oberyn meeting Tyrion in the cell. Today we shall look at scenes 6 to 1 in that order. Number 6 on the list is the Battle of Blackwater Bay in Season 2, Episode 9. I thought the battle was choreographed brilliantly, the special effects were really good, and importantly, the battle was gripping and had tremendous emotional weight. This was because on both sides there were characters we cared about, and, well, ones that could have done with getting their just desserts. More significantly still, the battle has major implications going forwards from a narrative perspective. Tyrion, the unsung hero, gets shafted as his father, Lord Tywin returns to take up his position at court as Hand of the King, the Tyrells are now firmly allied with the Lannisters to the point where Marjorie becomes betrothed to King Joffrey, Stannis has been defeated and now must take a completely different course of action in order to make good of his claim to the Iron Throne, plus the outcome of the battle does the Starks no favours at all. If anything, it makes getting Sansa back harder at a time when Robb's campaign is going badly awry in the Riverlands. Number 5. Tyrion's Trial, Season 4, Episode 6. This is possibly one of the best scenes in television history, as the script and the acting is absolutely outstanding. In one explosive outburst, you feel a lifetime of anger and pain that Tyrion has bottled up. In addition, you see the hypocrisy of everyone in the hall at the trial. Everyone, with maybe the exception of Cersei, knows that Tyrion didn't kill Joffrey, yet they say nothing and do nothing. Significantly, from a narrative perspective, the scene has consequence. Tyrion gives himself a third option. Up until this moment, he can either deny his guilt until he is found guilty and put to death, or he can take up the offer that his brother Jaime created for him, which is to plead guilty and get a more lenient sentence of being sent to the wall. It seems like a harsh form of leniency to be sent to the Westerosi equivalent of Siberia, but this is Westeros in the medieval world. Leniency and mercy are in short supply, so being sent to the wall sounds pretty lenient and quite kind under the circumstances. Tyrion, however, refuses both and does something else entirely. He plays his wild card.
I demand a trial by combat.
This way, he takes the decision over his life away from his father, and if Tyrion or his champion wins, he can go scot-free. Number 4. Renly and Littlefinger betray Ned Stark in Season 1, Episode 7. If there is a scene that sets in train the conflict of the War of the Five Kings, it is this one. Renly's decision to flee King's Landing after Ned refuses to take Cersei's children into custody before King Robert dies leaves Ned incredibly vulnerable. The most staggering part of all of this is that Ned does not seem to realise it. Seriously, how naive is he? Can he not feel the tension in the throne room as he walks before the King's Guard and the Lannister soldiers whilst being surrounded by the men of the City Watch, none of whom, it must be said, are loyal to him? And then he still says,
"Your son has no claim to the throne."
I mean, seriously, is the guy mad? Subsequently, and choreographed with chilling realism against the backdrop of bells ringing, the City Watch slaughters the remainder of Ned's guards before Littlefinger puts a dagger to his throat and says,
"I did warn you not to trust me."
The corollary of this scene, narratively speaking, is that in the next episode, Robb Stark, Ned's son, calls the banners and has his men march south to free their liege lord, thus beginning the War of the Five Kings. Number 3. Lord Eddard Stark gets beheaded at the climax of Season 1, Episode 9. This was a fabulous plot twist that set the tone for the show. Seldom has a Tolkien-esque traditional noble hero been killed with such treacherous suddenness. Unsurprisingly, the choreography and the timing of Ned's execution is perfect. He confesses, and we think he'll be sent to the wall, only for Joffrey's capricious and vicious nature to come to the fore. One command from him, and Ned loses his head, despite his mother's and son's appeals. Also, I found it typical that the crowd brayed for blood, even to a good man whom they don't know, just because someone said he was a traitor. It demonstrates some of humanity's worst characteristics. Moreover, the scene has significant ripple effects for the story going forwards. Ned's execution means that there is no chance for peace between the Northmen and the Lannisters, and it results in the former crowning Robb Stark as the king in the north. Similarly, Ned's execution hardens Arya's heart irreparably and makes her desire revenge against all those who have wronged her family. This lasts with her pretty much until the end of the show. Number 2. Meet Lord Walder Frey, Season 1, Episode 9. If it weren't for Ned Stark getting beheaded at the end of the episode, the introduction of Lord Walder would have been the best part of it. He steals the limelight, absolutely, and David Bradley played this old cantankerous git with relish. Moreover, from this scene we see the rank opportunism of each lord and nobleman in medieval fashion. Essentially, what's in it for me? Lord Walder is a vassal of Catelyn Stark's father, Lord Hoster Tully, but you'd never know it by the way he conducts himself. His reactions to the Starks arriving on the way down to the capital shows that it is better for him to be Machiavellian in nature, to be greedy, avaricious and selfish, rather than loyal, to ensure that he gets a better deal to further the status of his house. In addition, the scene shows us the reality of political alliances for the era and how marriage is one of the fundamental tenets to securing another house's allegiance. Plus, the scene has tremendous narrative consequence. A, it enables Robb Stark to use Lord Walder's bridge so he can reach Riverrun and win his victory at the Whispering Woods, wherein he takes Jaime Lannister hostage, and B, we see what happens when someone breaks his oath of allegiance and marries someone else. Before we get to number 1, I just want to make some honourable mentions, those scenes that I thought were really good, but for one reason or another did not quite make the list. First up is the Robert and Cersei scene from Season 1, Episode 5. This scene explains their marriage in a nutshell, all that's wrong with it, even though, ironically, it has kept the stability in the realm, thereby suggesting that there is a purpose to these kinds of political marriages in this world. Also in this scene, Robert shows us his great sadness that he didn't save Lyanna Stark during his rebellion, and that it has devoured him ever since. It has turned him into a drunken whoremonger, and it also explains why, even though he has achieved so much, he beat Rhaegar Targaryen on the Trident and became the king of Westeros after all, and yet despite all of that, none of it has made him happy. Plus to think that while Cersei is having a heart-to-heart with her husband, she is also plotting to have him killed at the same time. It reveals how dark and manipulative and sinister she is. The reason this scene did not make it onto my list is because there is no direct consequence from it, i.e. nothing happens as a result of it. This is probably in part because it was not in the initial script for the first season, and Dan and Dave, the creators, were told to write more scenes, otherwise the episode would not have been long enough. Next up on the honourable mentions list, Lord Tywin showing his hatred for Tyrion in Season 3, Episodes 1 and 10. These scenes are great for so many reasons, not least because the first one takes place in the first episode and the second in the last episode of the season, thereby giving us a satisfying story arc on why Lord Tywin hates his son Tyrion. From these scenes, we see that Lord Tywin might be a brilliant and effective ruler, but that he is also a deeply flawed man, as his hatred for Tyrion has consumed him and blinded him. Moreover, we also feel Tyrion's pain from these scenes. By this point, Tyrion has led the defense of King's Landing against Stannis' attack, he suffered a facial wound, and yet for all of this, his reward has been to be blamed for matters beyond his control, and that his father would rather he were dead. These scenes are so powerful and yet horrible to watch at the same time. The reason though that these scenes have not made it onto my list is because there is no significant direct consequence from them, other than Tywin denying Tyrion Casterly Rock. These scenes do, however, explain why Tywin hates Tyrion, and thus in some twisted way, we understand why Tywin is so keen to condemn Tyrion to death in the following season. Similarly, we understand Tyrion's outburst during his trial in that same season as well. But these are indirect consequences at best, sadly. Number 3 of the ones that didn't make it, Hodor's death in Season 6. This is a heartbreaking scene and really well done, and it explains how Hodor became the simpleton that he was in a fantastical way. The shame for the scene, though, is that there is no narrative consequence following it, i.e. it doesn't matter that Hodor dies. Mira Reed and then the returning Benjen Stark take over carting Bran to Winterfell, and this all makes Hodor's sacrifice essentially worthless. That adds another sad dimension to the scene, in my opinion, and not in a good way either. And now, finally, to the number one on my list. Jon and Daenerys go for a ride on the dragons in Season 8, Episode 1. This was such a romantic and wonderful scene of two people madly in love in a fantasy setting. It had so much consequence, as Jon refused to later take up his rightful position as King of Westeros because he loved her and, oh, who are we kidding? This scene was cringeworthy, cheesy and pointless. It added nothing to the story and had no place in a dark, murderous fantasy setting. On to the real number one, the Red Wedding. This scene is amazing on so many levels. First, it shows us the severe consequences in this world and the era for those who renege on their promise to marry into a family. Second, it is quite possibly the best plot twist on the show, possibly in television history, as it is logical, well thought through, and timed perfectly to devastate the audience. One of the main protagonists, Robb Stark, is betrayed and murdered when he had been trying to get justice for his betrayed and murdered father, and the scene underlined that no one, without exception, was safe from the author's wrath. Moreover, the consequences for the Red Wedding are many-fold. The Starks and their men are annihilated. The treacherous and hated Boltons are now the Wardens of the North in their stead. The treacherous and hated Freys are now the Lord Paramounts of the Trident, replacing the Tullys. And the Lannisters have won the War of the Five Kings, meaning that the despised King Joffrey will remain on the Iron Throne, and that there will be no justice for Ned Stark. If there were another scene in Game of Thrones that epitomised the unpredictable cunning, treacherous and murderous nature of the show and the medieval era, I'd love to know it. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed my analysis on which scenes worked and which scenes did not work from a narrative perspective. So, what do you think of them? Do you agree with my list? And which of your favourite scenes do you think I've missed out? Like, comment and hit that subscribe button, and then you will be the first to receive more Game of Thrones related content, including the scenes that did not work, as well as some cool fan fiction stories. Moreover, come the 2nd of July, my debut fantasy novella, The Sultan's Daughter, is going to be released, and then you can check to see whether or not all my scenes have narrative consequence. Until next time, keep well. Once again, guys, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button, and then you will be the first to receive more awesome content from my channel, and I hope to see you again soon.